Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Vantrue OnDash R2 Dashcam. It's one of the better dash cams that I've had a chance to test and drive around with so far. I've had it for the past couple months or so, and it's one of the better cameras that I've had a chance to use so far. In short, some of the highlights of the camera, it shoots nice high resolution 1080p and actually above, so you got good high res footage. The video quality is great in the daytime and in the nighttime. It handles a variety of lighting conditions actually really well. The audio quality is also actually really good. If you look on the back of the camera, it's got an LCD screen right there, which makes it easier to actually go in and, frame your footage. If you want, you can go in and, of course, adjust all the settings here in the camera. The menu system is actually really easy to use. Well done there. So good job there. There's no Wi-Fi built into the camera. You just do everything here straight through the screen. To get your footage, it's all saved here onto a micro SD card. I have noticed that if you have shorter nails with the design of the camera, it can make it kind of tough to get the card out sometimes. Sometimes I have to use a tool or try for a little bit, and that's kind of annoying to mess with. Another thing, kind of speaking of that, when you do, one of the cool things I like about the camera is the mount. Well, good and bad. The mount itself is a suction cup mount, as you can see, so it makes it really easy to mount and dismount or move from car to car. The mount is also twistable, so it's really easy to reorient and point in different directions, which is pretty cool. The camera also has like a little quick release disconnect like that, so you can see it's got the electrical connection right there, and then you can just connect the camera like that, and the power cable actually plugs into the mount. You can plug it into the camera, but it also gives you the option to plug into mount to easily remove and connect your camera, which is pretty cool. However, that's kind of one of the weak spots of the camera, and it will actually introduce some a little bit of wobble and vibration, and I actually do see that in the video footage. That's kind of a cool trick, but it does compromise the stability of the mount, and I do find that in the video footage there are some vibrations, which I think is actually one of the biggest issues in practice. Is when you're driving around, I do see more vibration with this camera than I do with some of the other ones, and I think it's actually primarily due to the mount there. So that's kind of one of the trade-offs. I think that's the biggest thing honestly stopping me from being like, yeah, this is an awesome camera, I want to run it full time, is I do find a fair amount of vibrations in the video footage. There are some other weird quirks, like the memory card sometimes can be a little bit tough, and because I'm having to mess with it, and this thing is all moving every time the camera gets repositioned and reoriented, so it's not the same every time. I don't get a consistent look when I'm driving around. And kind of another thing that I see is I actually like the fact that it has GPS built in. It's one thing I look for in dash cams. With this one, it's not actually built into the camera. It's got the suction cup mount like this. They also do sell an optional GPS suction cup mount like this. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger. It's got the same thing with the power cable that plugs in. It just plugs into the top instead of into the side. It's a little bit larger, and when you use this one, it allows you to use GPS in the camera, so you can actually display the speed that you're traveling on screen on your video footage. So a pretty handy feature if you like that. Another quirk that I found with that is that speed only works above 15 miles an hour. If you go below 15 miles an hour, the speed actually reads out as 0. So you can't actually see any speeds when you're driving around in a parking lot or a really low speed. So there are a couple little quirks like that, but overall, in terms of just the raw video footage, the menu system, kind of as camera as a whole, it seems to be a pretty good package. There are a couple weak spots, like the mount and that kind of stuff, but overall, it does seem to be one of the better cameras that I've had a chance to test so far. So with that said, let's take a little bit deeper dive into the camera, go over, kind of the basic features, resolution options, take a look at a bunch of video footage and all that stuff. So let's do it. Now, in the camera, we've got a bunch of different resolution options. This is kind of one of the main highlights of this camera. By default, you could shoot at 1080p if you like. So 1080p, 30 FPS, most every camera does that, right? If you want, you can also do 1080p with HDR mode. This will give you basically higher dynamic range, so it does a better job of actually, pulling out shadow detail and highlight detail. I do notice that when I do this, I get less contrast, and I do get less video quality overall. For the best video quality in terms of sharpness and being able to read details like license plates, I have found that the standard 1080p option works better. Now, going to obviously the higher resolution, you're going to get even more resolution, and you're going to do a better job of being able to see the details. Now, the highest resolution option is going to be 2560 by 1080p at 30 FPS. This is a little bit weird one. With this one, basically what it does is it goes really high resolution, but it chops off the top and the bottom of the video footage, so you no longer get your 16:9 aspect ratio that you typically see with videos. Now, what it does, the reason this is nice, is because you're not wasting time, recording stuff way up in the sky or on your dash. It's going to be focusing all of the resolution and bitrate into the main central area of the video, which is really what you're interested in. So this is actually the highest quality version, is kind of this one here with the funky aspect ratio. Now there's another option here. You can go down and you can do 2304 by 1296. This is my personal favorite. This is basically going to be, in my experience, the best kind of compromise. You get your 16 by 9 aspect ratio, so it looks good posting to YouTube and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be higher res than 1080p, so you get a little bit more detail out of the camera. So this is my personal favorite, and this is what I run. You know, with these high resolution options, you're going to get about 6.5 to 7 hours of recording time on a 64 gig memory card. So that's kind of to give you an idea as far as, you know, how much space you get. If you want, that's not enough, you can, you know, always back down and do something like 720p. You've got two different options to shoot at 720p. 720p, much lower resolution, less detail, but a lot more recording time stored on your card. You can do your standard 720p footage, or if you want, you can do 720p at 60 FPS if what you're going for is really smooth, silky smooth video quality in the Dashcam. So, if you want 60 FPS, this camera is able to do that as well. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at video quality, because that's obviously going to be one of the most important things that you'll find in the Dashcam is how does the video look, right? So let's take a look at that. Starting off in you know, daytime with sunny conditions, it actually looks excellent. The contrast looks great. The colors are nice and rich, but they can be a little bit oversaturated. I actually noticed that recently, especially with all the fall colors going out. But overall, they kind of designed that to make the camera look good out of the box, you know? So daytime and sunny conditions, it actually looks great. Another thing it actually does really well is when you're driving into the sun. With some cameras, when you drive into the sun and the flare can completely blow out your image. With this one, when you're driving into the sun, it actually manages the flare very well, so you can actually still see what's going on ahead of you. So if you're in an area where you're seeing a lot of sun, which is kind of most anywhere, you know, when the sun's lower on the horizon, this is actually a good option. Another thing I really like is how this camera looks when you're driving around in the shade. In shady conditions, you actually get some of the best video quality I've seen from any Dashcam. So, you know, in the shady conditions, awesome there as well. Same thing if it's cloudy outside. When it's cloudy, again, the video looks excellent. I've got no complaints with how the video looks in cloudy conditions. Nighttime. Nighttime, again, video looks good. The blacks are black. It's typically easy to read license plates when they're up close. If things are moving, again, like most cameras, you know, with the longer shutter speeds, it could be a little bit tough to read, you know, any signs or license plates, things like that. In terms of white balance shifts, this camera actually does a really good job there, meaning when you're switching between sunlight and artificial light, such as when you're going into a tunnel or if you're coming out of a tunnel, in those conditions, it also does a really good job of handling the white balance shift going from kind of bluer daylight to orange artificial streetlights. So in terms of video quality, it does a good job all around. Audio quality, actually excellent. It does a really good job there. It makes it really easy for me to hear what's going on with my radar detector so I can share saves with people. It does a good job of actually recording what's going on in the cabin, or even if I'm in a phone call. This was actually really useful the other day. I was actually taking a phone call over my car's speakerphone, and the lady was telling me some important information. Because I was driving, I wasn't able to write down what she was telling me, right? So she was telling me some important information with some instructions that I needed to save for later. And when I got home, I remembered, oh, right, I had the whole call recorded because I had my Dashcam footage, so I pulled off the memory card, and because the audio quality was really good, even though I was driving down the highway, it was still actually really easy to hear, you know, what she was saying, and I was able to go back and get everything that I needed. So having the good audio quality on the camera, I'm actually finding really, really helpful. Now inside the box, you're going to get a number of things. Obviously, you're going to be getting the camera itself. You're also going to be getting the suction cup mount. In addition to those two, you're going to be getting your cigarette lighter power cable. It's got a nice long cable that comes out to plug into your camera. One cool trick I like with the cable is the fact that you've actually got a USB port that's available right there. It charges your cell phone, for example, so you could plug in your phone. It charges your phone at up to 1 amp, so, you know, enough to keep it charged while you're driving around. It's not necessarily a high-speed charger, but it is really nice to have this if you're using your cigarette lighter port for your Dashcam. There's also a hardwire cable available. It doesn't come with it. I would recommend picking one of those up. I'll put it down in the video description, along with everything else that I'm going to be kind of bringing up. And then finally, besides this stuff, you get a manual as well. Now, a memory card is not included with the camera. It's one of those things they do to save a couple bucks and bring the price of the camera down when you look at it online, right? When you look at it, the camera retails for $129 to $139 or so online. So the price itself is pretty reasonable, and that's kind of one of the tricks that a lot of these companies can do. So I would recommend getting a card for the camera. You can get them for 10, 20 bucks. They're nice and cheap, and you're definitely going to want one to use the camera. Another thing besides the hardwire cable and the memory card is you can get the optional GPS suction cup mount. There's no GPS actually actually built into the camera, but it does support GPS functionality. Instead of the normal suction cup mount that it comes with, for 22 bucks you can get the optional GPS suction cup. Basically what this does is it allows you to display your speed when you're driving down the road. Pretty handy there. So does a good job. I like the way the text is actually displayed on screen, so I find it to be a pretty helpful feature. The only kind of weird quirk I found about it is, for whatever reason, it only works above 15 miles an hour. If you slow down below 15 miles an hour, the speed actually resets to 0, which is kind of annoying. So if you're driving around in a parking lot or really low speeds, the GPS is just going to read 0 until you get above 15 miles an hour. Contacted the manufacturer about that. They tried to get me to update the firmware, but that didn't seem to solve the issue, so it seems to be an issue with this camera. So something I noticed, but otherwise, overall, I mean, I find it to be a pretty helpful feature. I have noticed that, as you can see, the mount is a little bit bigger if you go for the GPS one. And another thing is the placement of the power cable. On the standard mount, the power cable is actually here on the side, which I like quite a bit. What that means is when you've got this actually plugged in here, the cable can actually run like this, across your headliner, which is pretty nice. If you're using the GPS antenna instead, you'll notice the power cable actually comes out of the top of the camera. And kind of one weird issue I've noticed is because of that, when I have this mounted in my car, it kind of limits how high I can mount the camera, because the cable is actually kind of bumping up against the top of my car, the top of the windshield area. So I actually do have to run it down a little bit lower. With my car being a little bit smaller, I'm kind of, limited on real estate up there. And a bigger car, depending on where you place it, it's not going to be an issue. Additionally, if you want to mount it right under your rear view mirror, this is going to be getting in the way, so that's kind of a weird little quirk that I found. But if you kind of mount it off to the side or whatever, you can find a spot for it. But I have noticed that the cable placement of the GPS antenna is a little less than ideal. I prefer the way the cable works in the standard mount. Having a mount that actually rotates like this, turns out it's actually pretty handy in practice. I found a bunch of cool benefits. There's things like if you're driving down the road and you see something off at an angle, you can easily just rotate your camera and point it right towards it to get a better view. Additionally, if you ever get stopped or something, I haven't tested this out and I hope to never do, but if you get stopped and you want to point your camera off to the side, if somebody's actually coming up to your driver's side window, a police officer or whatever, it makes it easier to actually record that whole encounter and get not just the audio, but also the video footage. And finally, something I found the other day, if you're not running a rear dash cam, I would recommend it in general, but let's say you're not. If you have your camera mounted in a way where you can actually rotate the camera, you can actually point it out the back window and see anything that's going on behind you. So if there's anything questionable or there's a guy who's kind of tailgating you, you can easily flip your camera around and record what's actually going on back there. And that's actually something that can be pretty handy as well. As I mentioned earlier, another kind of issue with the camera is the way the mount actually prevents a really solid connection. And what that means is when you're driving around, and I think this is probably one of the biggest flaws of the camera, is there's not a nice solid sturdy mount. And so what happens is when you're driving around, there's actually a little bit of flex in the mount itself, and that little bit of flex actually does introduce some vibrations, which you'll see in the actual footage. So when you're driving around, even on relatively smooth roads, even at lower speeds, I still see a fair amount of vibration that I really don't like. It kind of annoys me as somebody who likes good quality video, So for some people, I'm sure that's not going to be an issue, but I have actually found this to be an issue, and that's kind of one of the things that when I look at the footage, I'm just like, there's a little bit more vibration than I would like. I contacted the manufacturer about this as well. There's no fix or anything. I think it's honestly just a design flaw due to the way the mount actually works and attaches to the camera. So, yeah. I've also noticed driving around that sometimes randomly the GPS signal will go out, and even if you're driving around on the highway with plenty of open sky above you, sometimes it'll just lose its speed and reset to 0. The speed will actually come back over time, but the GPS is a little wonky. I do like having the feature itself, but it's not as totally reliable and consistent as I've seen with some other cameras. On the driver's side of the camera, you've got your little micro SD port. As I mentioned earlier, it can be kind of an issue to actually get the card out, especially if you've got shorter fingernails and you like to keep them kind of clean and trimmed. It can make it kind of tough. So there have been a couple times where I've actually had to rely on, grabbing like a tool, like a screwdriver off my keychain or something to actually go in and push it in. So that's something that with some other cameras I found it actually really easy to get the cards in and out, and I really like that design. With this one, it does make it a little bit tough, and that combined with the fact that the mount is designed to be rotated and loose, sometimes I'll have to actually rotate the camera towards me to adjust this, or if I'm going in here and messing with it, things get pushed sideways. So the camera does get moved around a fair amount, and with the moving mount and the tricky memory card, the camera winds up getting moved every time I'm going driving if I'm pulling the card in and out. So that's something that I find pretty pretty annoying. But if you're the type of person who just leaves your card in and it's really only there in case something bad happens, you know, accidents or whatever, knock on wood, you know, that's not really going to be an issue. But if you're taking your card in and out of your camera and you want the camera in the exact same spot every single time for like a consistent flow of footage, that is something to consider. Now on the back of the camera, we've got our LCD screen. It's about 2.7 inches or so. It takes about 8 seconds or so, I just plugged in the camera, for the camera to actually fire up and begin recording. So it's not immediate, but it actually is pretty decently quick. There it goes, you can see it's going. So it's about an 8-second delay or so. I do wish it was a little faster. I do like instantaneous startup time, but with this one it's not too bad. But as you can see, we've got our screen right there. It makes it really easy to actually go in and, you know, whoops, that's in the way. Hello. So you can go in and see everything that's going on. You can aim your camera the way that you want. You can also tell when the camera is recording or not. And the camera, you can go in and tell it to shut the screen off after, you know, recording begins and everything like that. Also makes it really easy. We'll stop recording right there. To go in and, you know, adjust all of your settings is really easy to do here. Boom, 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 as you can see, so resolution options, all that good stuff. Easy to do here on screen. Easy to actually go in and actually review your footage as well. So you can go in and see your files, and you know, you got your normal files, and you've also got your events. So if you've got the G sensor activated, for example, and there's some sort of impact, it can go in and save that footage. As I mentioned in my other reviews, I almost never use that feature because it activates on potholes and speed bumps and the little reflector things on the in between lanes and stuff. So I never use that, but you can go in here and you can see you've got all your different footage. So go in right there. So you're driving around and you can go in here really easily and actually play back your footage, which is really nice. So if you need to see on the road in case there's an accident, you got to show a police officer like right there, it's really easy to do. So the screen quality here looks good. It also does show everything else like the time and the GPS, which is kind of slick. So screen there, I like that feature. It's also really nice. I saw somebody actually just posted on the forums on RDF, you know, there was an accident that I think his son actually had gotten into, and he didn't realize that his camera wasn't actually recording. There was an issue with the SD card, and he didn't know that the camera wasn't working, and so he went to go pull the footage after the accident, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to get the footage. So for that reason, I'm actually finding it pretty nice to have an LCD screen here, because you can actually confirm that the camera is on, that it's recording, and so on. So that's pretty handy. Another thing that I kind of wish was changed is, actually, let's do this real quick. I'm going to pop out the memory card. So camera shuts off. Let's go ahead and restart it real quick. So if there's no memory card actually in the camera kind of warns you, but not the way that I would want. If you take a look, it'll actually say on screen, you know, hey, please insert card, but there is no audio beep. There's no audio warning, even though I have all the audio stuff enabled. I can go in and enable the beeps and stuff, whatever. But with this camera, and I'm finding this the case with a lot of cameras, I don't know why the companies aren't doing this, but if you have no memory card in your camera because you forgot to take it out or something that happens to me a lot, I actually take my card, I put it in my pocket, but then when I get into my car, I forget to put it back in. My camera is not going to beep at me and let me know that I'm getting no dash cam footage recording. So I wish they would actually go in and do that. So you do get the visual warning but no audio warning, and that I think is just a flaw. I think every camera, in my opinion, should do that to let you know that your camera's not operating. This one does not do that. But the other things that you can do when it's recording, you can start and stop recording. It's not going to work right now because I got that going. You can do things like go in and mute your microphone, you know, so you can turn the screen on and off. You've got kind of your basic functionality here that you would need, and it's all really accessible. You've got the raised button, so it's easy to actually go in and press while driving. You just have to remember what button does what, you know. But otherwise, having the screen, I think it's a pretty nice feature. Now, when you go look online on Amazon, there's actually an upgraded version of this camera. It's pretty much the same exact thing, but rather than like this silver trim here, they've actually changed it and kind of done like a blackout version, which I actually prefer. I like having a stealthy camera that doesn't, you know, bling bling shine and reflect and get people's attention. And so if you're looking to get this camera, I would get the blacked out version. It's another $10 or so on top of this one. This one is $129. The new upgraded version is $139. There's also some really minor firmware updates, things like that, but really nothing too major. It's pretty much the same thing, just with like a more blacked out case. So if you're looking for a couple bucks less, get this one. If you're looking to really have the blacked out version and something a little bit stealthier, personally I would choose the upgraded version with the blacked out case. So yeah, that's pretty much it. In short, you can see it's a good camera. The video quality is great, daytime, nighttime. I love, you know, how the video itself looks. I don't like the fact that there's some vibrations that the camera introduces due to the design of the mount. I found that the memory card is a little bit tough to get in and out. That's kind of annoying as well, but for some people that's not necessarily going to be an issue, but it's something good to be aware of. I like the fact that GPS is available here in the camera. It's done through an external mount. I like it internally, but that's one of the reasons why the camera is so small and compact here, as you can see. They put the GPS right there instead. This GPS mount is an extra 22 bucks. The hardwire cable, if you want that, is an extra 10 bucks. And if you want a memory card, you can get like a 64 gig memory card for another 20 bucks. I'll put links to all those down in the video description, as well as the 2 versions of this camera, the standard one here that I'm reviewing, as well as the upgraded blacked out version if you want something stealthier with a little bit newer firmware. So awesome, there you go. There's my quick take on this camera. I hope this review has been helpful. A big thank you to Vantrue. They actually reached out to me and sent me this camera for free. So this is a test unit from the manufacturer. I do get to keep it, but I'm not being compensated or anything in any way. So, you know, full disclosure, I always like to let you guys know. So there you go. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I hope this has been helpful for you guys, and yeah, I guess that's really it. So thanks for watching. If you want to see some of my other Dashcam reviews, I'm going to have them available here on screen, and you can click those as well. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.